Hi everybody and welcome to the Kidney Coach YouTube channel. I am naturopath Fiona Chin, co-founder of Kidney Coach and Kaigenesis, a range of supplements designed for people diagnosed with chronic kidney disease, whether you've got a low EGFR or you've got high creatinine levels that you need to clear, which we're going to talk about today. We might have a supplement for you. And I'm joined again today by the fabulous, the wonderful, the ever so intelligently beautiful Jessianna Saville. Jessianna is a renal dietitian. She is the lead and CEO of all good things over at Kidney Nutritional Institute. Jessianna is a absolute groundbreaker, forefront runner when it comes to all things diet and renal disease and how to treat it, making sure she treats the person, not the disease, doing epigenetic testing, all the other good things, and she stays all over the research, so she's far, far ahead of everybody else, and I always enjoy our chats. Jessianna, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm very, very happy to be here, especially for this topic today, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting because I was like, we've done this. And then I'm like, no, we haven't. But it's because I wrote an article on it. And I'm glad we're going to have this discussion because I don't know about you. I was always joking about this with Lindsay, but my Instagram feed is just filled with perimenopausal stuff because I'm 45. And so it just thinks I need to know about that all the time. And I'm like, boring. But in those feeds, they're always talking about women taking creatine and the benefits of it. If you read these Instagram reels and you believe them, it's the most studied supplement. It's been around the longest. It's probably one of the safest. Yeah, so it's meant to be, I think it's got more trials on it than any other supplement ever used. And we wanted to talk about the use of creatine in kidney disease because there's whether we call it an old wives' tale or not, that creatine supplementation long-term damages kidneys. And that has been, Maybe this is like the potassium myth, Jess.
There's a lot of
another one?
Yeah, there's a lot of myths in CKD world that just keep getting perpetuated. And then when you look at the most recent reviews, most recent research, what you find is not that they're like 100% wrong for everybody, but they're wrong for more people than they are right. And creatine is one of those. But it has so much interest, and especially like social media really promotes it. And I have a lot of patients who are very, very fit, very physically active, and they have reduced GFR, and they have questions about creatine because they want to use it to improve their performance.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the same thing for me. And because I have so many patients on it, and then when you're running EGFRs, I do that with all my patients as standard care, I am seeing decreased EGFRs, and then I'm like, are you taking a creatine supplement? And then because for anyone that doesn't know, EGFR, estimated glomerular filtration rate, is worked out on your creatinine levels divided by your age, and it goes through an algorithm. And so if you're taking doses of creatine, and Jessianna will walk us through the studies with it, you will get transient increased creatinine levels. And when that's feeding into this algorithm to work out your estimated glomerular filtration rate, we might see fake or adulterated EGFR levels, which make you think you've got kidney disease, but it's actually due to the creatinine supplement. So there's this thing that taking creatine will reduce your EGFR. But why don't you walk us through the studies, Jess, but also let's talk about what creatine is, why people might do all the basics.
So we have two things here. We have creatinine and we have creatine, right? So creatinine is a waste byproduct that your kidneys clear. Creatine is, I don't know what kind of molecule it is, but it is used everywhere in your bodies, your liver, your brain, your kidneys, your hormones. Like creatine is used everywhere in your body.
Yeah, 3 amino acids. So it's glycine.
3 amino acids. Thank you. I told you at the beginning, it was like, you got to fill in like where I'm missing like some technical things because you wrote the article. But so one thing I think that's really important to establish in this discussion is that sometimes when we say, okay, creatine converts into creatinine, and creatinine is determining my GFR or my kidney function. What we start to think is if creatine is raising creatinine, that is causing kidney damage. that's not true. So that's the first thing we have to clear up here. Just because you have more waste product, more creatinine clearing, doesn't mean you have worse kidneys. If you have a lot of creatinine, you're going to clear, or a lot of creatine, you're going to clear more creatinine. But creatinine isn't necessarily damaging your kidneys. It's just the measure of what's being cleared by your kidneys. And you have to understand that in this discussion about creatine, because otherwise you say, well, no matter what, if my creatinine is going to go up, I can't take it. But that's because you're assuming that creatinine is the problem. And it's not the problem. It's just the measurement of kidney function. If kidney function is, like, if you're just eating a normal diet, it would be the measure of how much creatinine is being cleared. So I just have to establish that, because otherwise people start drawing the wrong connections. So it's going back to your question. When you look at the studies, and there was a really good one that, this is why we're podcasting about this, because I was just reading about this, is there was a review that came out in BMC Nephrology just last month, so November 2025. So we're recording this December 2025. And they pulled a lot. Let me see if I have, again, how many studies. I think they pulled like 20 studies that they thought were, let's see, 12 studies. 21 studies were included in the systematic review, and 12 studies were eligible for meta-analysis of serum creatinine levels. So that's a good amount of studies. Now, there aren't any studies where they have like thousands of people, but overall they were looking at the pattern of all of these different studies and saying, hey, like, what happened with these people who in a trial took creatine? Because there is some thought that creatine actually could be beneficial for kidneys. So if we're just keeping people deficient, which many people are deficient, and then you have people eating like super low protein diets, so then they're even more deficient, that would be a problem. Before I get into the impact of that, maybe you can explain the benefit of creatine on the kidneys that you saw when you were writing your article.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so particularly on the kidneys. So just so everyone understands how it works, at a fundamental level, creatine is like your body's rapid response energy system. So inside your muscles, creatine exists primarily in its phosphorylated form, phosphocreatine. It acts like a fully, charged battery ready to spring into action. And then during high intensity activities, when your body needs fast phosphocreatine, it steps up to replenish this ATP cycle, which sits inside your mitochondria. So it's big on energy production. It's why you'll see the bodybuilders use it to replenish themselves after they have done a workout. And then we also know it's amazing for cognition and brain health and bone health and all of these kind of things. So we also then, in the studies that I found, is creatine deficiency a hidden problem in kidney disease? So then there was this literature review done in 2019 that found that people with chronic kidney disease, especially those on dialysis, actually might be creatine deficient. What this study found that particularly in stages 3, 4, and 5, the body's ability to produce creatine naturally, which it does do, becomes compromised. And then for dialysis patients, the situation was even worse. And we know that because our sources of creatine in the diet are mostly from meat sources. So it's even worse in vegans and vegetarians, which a lot of our kidney-based patients are eating diets like that. So what we see is you see sarcopenia, which is muscle wastage, chronic fatigue, decreased quality of life, cognitive decline, and also, and this is specific to people with kidney disease, potentially shortened lifespans. So, and then there was a 2024 study, so last year, that had 5,000 individuals that found that food-derived creatine not only appeared completely safe for kidney patients, but it actually helped to protect kidney function, which was the opposite of what they found. And I can put the links into these studies below, but they have this amazing graph, and they saw that when you are in stage 5 CKD, your demand for dietary creatine goes up. and that your endogenous creatine production goes down. So you get this graph going like that. And if you're not supplementing it, this is where you got the impaired cognition, loss of muscle mass, fatigue, myalgia. So that's what they found, that especially in these later stages, that typically when used at doses between 3 to 5 grams, it actually had a remarkable safety profile with over 500 peer-reviewed publications, and it seemed to be okay and even protective in kidney disease. That's what I found when I was doing the research.
Well, and that's what this kind of coming back to meta-analysis, that's what they were seeing also. What they saw, though, because they were breaking it down by week. So they said that that they found that the subgroup analysis of creatinine, creatinine. See, when I read that, it's like these words with just an IN difference. Okay. So when they were taking creatine and then they only followed them up less than 1 week, it was significantly higher creatine levels, right? In less than 1 week, the creatinine levels. I'm going to confuse everyone. Okay, so they take creatine, they follow up less than 1 week, everyone's creatinine goes up, right? Not everyone, but statistically a lot. From weeks 1 through 12 on the follow-up, there was no statistical difference on creatinine levels and creatine, which is interesting. And then after week 12, so kind of long-term use, and creatine, you have to have kind of a loading dose. So this does make sense in some ways. It usually takes people about a month to kind of load their system so they have enough. After 12 weeks, then again, they saw statistically significant increased creatinine levels with creatine. Now, what's really, really important here is back to the first point I made, is that what we generally jump to is like, hey, their creatinine levels went up. That means their kidney function went down. But when you think about it on like a storage capacity, it would make sense. Like in the first week, creatinine goes up because you have this influx of creatine in your system and it's not going to be moving into storage. Then weeks 1 through 12, you're going to saturate your stores and kind of have enough in your body. And then after week 12, you may now have extra that would make your stores go up again. So to me, that like just physiologically, that makes sense on kind of the range of time what they saw. But the conclusion from this was so good because I was like, that's it. Like they hit the nail on the head. They said that creatine supplementation is associated with a modest transient. Okay, this word transient, right? Like it's kind of temporary. Increase in serum creatinine levels likely due to metabolic turnover rather than renal impairment. So it's a metabolic increase because you have more in your body, and so that's going to be measured as a waste rather than you have more, and so you have reduced kidney function. So they weren't really seeing reduced kidney function. It's just we use the waste product to measure how our kidney function, but that's not quite right.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's not like, when you see proteinuria where you're getting a protein spill. And so it's not like creatinine causes like damage as far as we know to the kidneys, but it's interesting that that's what we use as the measurement to figure out the eGFR. And then you start to think, well, is actually that a good measurement? Because if we are supplementing with creatine, maybe we're better off using actual eGFR, but then I think that's still a creatine, they're filtering and seeing how you filter it, or we're better off with our things like cystatin C and these other sort of markers if someone with CKD wanted to use creatine as a supplement, because now we're thinking it might actually be useful, especially in the later stages, to prevent against muscle loss, cognitive decline, fatigue, all the things that are, it happens in CKD. So it's such an interesting conversation about the actual validity then of using an eGFR to measure kidneys.
Yeah, and I do think that it's relevant on dosage, just like all supplements with CKD. So we think about magnesium, and you and I have talked about magnesium before. Magnesium can tend to run a little tiny bit high, serum magnesium for CKD, but people can still be deficient in magnesium, their stores are deficient, even though it looks a little bit high. So I think about creatine a little bit the same way, is that you might have deficient stores in your body. And remember, it is like stored in your body in multiple places. It's utilized. So it's not something that just like goes in and out, right? Our body has this like amazing way of storing different nutrients and having some available for like use right now and some for, it keeps a little stash for later if it needs a little bit more. So with creatine, I do think it's really relevant to think about that storage capacity that you might need in CKD. I I I don't think you'd want to do mega doses. That would make me nervous, but that makes me nervous with a lot of supplements and CKD. Like our bodies don't need that much. But even if you're doing the dose like you recommended, 3 to 5 grams, it's a really basic dose. Most like powders is like 1 scoop, tasteless. Likely you're going to be safe. If you notice your creatinine levels go up, you can take it off and be like, oh, it was the creatine. Does that mean you should stop it? Not necessarily, but I think you'd have to evaluate it as a whole picture and decide what else is going on. What you wouldn't want to do though is start an intervention. Like let's say you're starting a dietary change, like a plant-based diet, right? And you're like, and I'm going to add on creatine with that. And so now you can't tell the positive impact of whatever intervention you're doing because you've added something that muddies the water. It's not decreasing the impact of it, but it makes it look like there's less of an impact.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because I was speaking to my kidney mastery group about this, and we've got a patient with high creatinine levels, but he's a big guy with a lot of muscle mass that works out a lot. So I'm like, well, you can't run your blood test after he's done a workout, because what happens when you work out, you cause muscle hypertrophy, which is the breaking of tissue, and it leaks creatine into the system for the kidneys to clear. So you will get also a transient amount that way. And I wonder too about diseases like sarcopenia, which for people who don't know is muscle wastage, which we have a lot of people experiencing. And I wonder if you're going through an active phase of sarcopenia, meaning muscle breakdown, whether you then again might have a transient increase in creatinine levels in an EGFR because someone's got an active sarcopenic disease. I'd need to dig into it, and then you go, well, creatine would be useful, but you don't have the muscle mass to store it. So, there's a whole pile of things in here with creatine that really need nuance, that we maybe haven't properly taken into consideration before, especially looking at that 2024 study to suggest, especially in stages 3, 4, and 5, that creatine actually probably is protective in some ways. So I think they're the things, I definitely, if you are a big person and working out a lot, you're going to see levels go up there too. And number 2, if you are going through an active sarcopenic disease, which we would definitely see in stages 4 and especially 5 on dialysis, when people are just sitting at home or having to go into clinics, you probably are going to get a transient raise in creatinine levels as you get active muscular tissue breakdown, as the body has to clear it. So yeah, it suddenly starts to come back to making sure maybe you are running other tests alongside and looking at bun and all those sort of things that would actually give you a bigger idea or picture of what's going on with kidney function.
Yeah. And to me, kind of one of the take homes of creatine is it's not an absolute no like we used to think. Like I honestly thought no for a long time. In fact, until this year, I thought, no, I'm just not going to recommend it because I don't want to like mess around with it. But then I heard Dr. Isra from Integrative Kidney. He's like, oh yeah, like I'm okay with people taking it. I was like, oh, there's something I haven't learned yet about this. And when I went back and actually I hadn't looked at the papers on it in a long time. And I was like, whoa, 2025. Well, this paper just came out, so I hadn't seen it then. But 2023, 2024, like there's multiple papers that talk about rethinking our stance on creatine. So I don't think it's an absolute no, but like you said, and with any supplement, it's also not all an absolute yes, but potentially could use it. And I think the other piece is I wouldn't say that if you take creatine, that's going to kick your kidneys out either. Because I have patients with I see this in the PKD world. Their kids are like into sports or weightlifting or whatever, and they're like, hey, I want to take some creatine. And the parents are like, no, 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 you can't do that because you have a risk for kidney disease. But they actually could take it and be just fine. I don't feel
Yeah,
like it causes kidney disease. Like to me, I'm like, you can't say creatine causes kidney disease. And you're like, yeah, look at all these like big, heavy, like weightlifting athletes and now have, kidney problems. That's false data. So
yeah, and that actually came from a 1988 case study that fueled that, and it was done in young guys with pre-existing kidney disease who took 15 grams daily, which is a bigger dose than
yeah.
we generally would recommend. And while their creatinine levels increased, they didn't. They were saying, well, then their kidney disease got worse. But again, it's everything that you just spoke about. We see that, and it was done in a followed up 2 weeks after, which is in that period where you're going to have more until you draw it into storage. So I find it really interesting. And the other thing that study didn't take into account is the extremely high doses, the concurrent use with other supplements, and often steroids. So yeah, it's got over 500 peer-reviewed publications examining its effects, and scientific consensus generally shows it's actually quite safe in kidney disease. But it was just this, a bit like the potassium stuff that we talk about. It was one study that said that it damaged it, but they were in pre-existing kidney diseased patients, and now we know about this transient sort of shift that happens. We don't know that it actually made it worse. So again, it's a one study that causes this snowball effect into thinking that creatine, I worked for GNC when I was studying, eons ago, and it was this thing that, if you take really high doses of creatine, you could potentially cause kidney damage. It was a myth going around back in my naturopathic career.
I remember. Well, I early on in my career was in a football town, like a big football town in Texas, and I remember our nephrologist mentioning something like this, and I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, don't do that." But it's not. Creatine, I honestly think, is a little bit overly demonized, same as magnesium and vitamin C and potassium. And it could have some good benefits, but of course, like everything that we mentioned, you really want to have a baseline lab before you start almost like any supplement, because nothing is absolute. Not even any medication is absolute on if it's going to be positive or negative. Same for any supplement. Have a baseline lab. Make sure you have a plan in place, and be sure of your dosage that you're using, because too often with supplements, either people go way too low and like it has like no effects. You're just like, I mean, it's probably not hurting you, it's probably not helping you for the money you're spending, or people go like way too high, and that's where you really run into some big problems. So if you get a good moderate dose, start taking it, test your labs, probably anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks after you start a supplement, then you can see what its impact is for you.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And, we mentioned this before I hit record, and I sort of just want to speak to this point. I have a lot of patients that will come to see me that have been on creatine for a long time or take it. And I run their bloods, and I'm like, and I may not know. It's one of those things that people often put in so long that they may not actually tell me. So I'm like, how's this person? I'm not seeing them for, kidney disease. I'm like, how's this person? Because I have hawk eyes for this stuff. So I'm like, we've got an EGFR, and they're 30 something, and their EGFR sitting in the high 60s, 70s. And then I'll be like, are you taking a creatine supplement? And they'll be like, yeah. So then I get them to take it out for 3 weeks and then rerun the test. And 9 times out of 10, the EGFR will normalize. In the odd case that it doesn't, then I will run cystatin C, and I will run the markers for the tubules. So I might look at retinol binding protein and microglobulin just to see if there's anything weird there. And I'm looking at their blood sugar levels to see if there's anything weird with their insulin or anything like that. And, I had one where we did this. I've retested it actually 3 times because this patient's been on creatine for such a long time, and the EGFR still doesn't move even when we take it out for a long time. And so I think, this patient actually does look like they've got some, stage sort of one
Dysfunction that you need to work through.
yeah, but I have to keep going back and forth and testing and making sure they're removing it 100% and that they didn't accidentally put it in the day before because they're so used to taking it that would cause that transient bump again. So, I've had quite a few patients where I put all the alarm bells on, and then when you ask the question, "Are you taking creatine?" it'll be yes, and I'll be like, okay. And then I have to rerun all my labs. So I think for other healthcare practitioners out there that have eyes for kidney disease, and especially picking up stages 1 and 2, which often get missed, you do need to check to see if your patients are on creatine, how long they've been on it, the dosage that they take, and then just doing things like cystatin C, taking the creatine out and rechecking to actually get a baseline. Because, I know because I have such alarm bells for kidney disease because it's my thing, I'm like, oh my goodness, this patient doesn't know. And then I'm like, hang on a minute. Maybe actually they're fine because they're not showing any other markers that I would worry about.
Yeah.
It's a very popular supplement at the moment, and I would tell you 9 times out of 10 my patients won't flag me that they're on creatine because it's just part of their day-to-day life.
It's just like a routine, you don't even, because it's like such a tasteless white powder.
Exactly.
You don't even notice if you I make like an herbal tea every day and I put a scoop in there and I honestly don't even know it's there and I would forget I would take it. But yeah, I definitely would be something that's easy to get missed.
I think that's all.
I also wouldn't say that creatine is one of your, in my book, if I'm picking through key supplements to take, I also don't want to say that creatine is hey, top 10 on my list of supplements to take for CKD. I think more of what we're saying is that if you're taking it because you see other places where it might be beneficial, it's not necessarily bad for CKD.
Mm-hmm.
Could it have benefits for CKD? Yes. But that part I feel it's less fleshed out on it being a core strategy where you're going to if I start taking creatine, I'm going to see my kidney function improve. That's not necessarily
100%.
True. You're not going to see that with creatine. You might see other areas in your life improve, but the big places where you really see where you're seeing reduction of inflammation in the kidneys so you can get a true increase in kidney function are when you're being very precise, either with you're getting on a very alkaline diet or you're working towards reducing inflammation or addressing gut issues or making sure your micronutrients on point. Those are more powerful than a single supplement like creatine. And so just want to make sure that piece is clear because it wouldn't be on my top 10, but if someone was taking it, I wouldn't necessarily be like, what? Don't take it because you have CKD. I'd say it probably could fit in for you, but let's just make sure we know what is what here. And it's not artificially kind of making your kidney function look worse.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I agree. It's not in my, there are other supplements that I would pick well and before creatine, but it might be useful to some people, especially if you've got sarcopenia and things like that. So
yeah.
So no, totally agree with that. It's not one where if you've got kidney disease, it's I must put in creatine. You'll get better bang for your buck out of all the things that you said. So that's a good point. Thank you for mentioning that. Okay, well, I feel like we've covered most of that there, Jessianna. Is there anything else you wanted to add about the creatine discussion?
I don't think so, but definitely check out the studies in the links below because I think that they tell I think they really dig into some more of the pathways that we didn't talk about today. So if this is a very interesting topic too for professionals or patients, the studies that are out there recently are really well done. They're really nice studies and they're really clear on pathways and thoughts. And I think they're good tools to keep in your belt when you're thinking about if this is, something that's going to work for you.
Yeah, I totally agree. Thank you, Jessianna. As always, if you want to know more about what Jessianna and her team at Kidney Nutritional Institute do, head to kidneynutritionalinstitute.org. I'll put the link in below. You've got another intake for PKD coming up in...
We do in February. So if you have polycystic kidney disease and you're wanting to look at a ketogenic protocol, especially a very personalized ketogenic protocol. We run a program twice a year in February and September for people that want to work through this with a dietitian, with a group. We've ran over almost 300 people through the program at this point. We've got some great data on it, and people often will tell us it's life-changing because it is. Like, this is not just like, let's put you on a keto diet, 20 grams carbs, but it's really getting into what's the right way for you to approach PKD for you. Does that include low carb, ketogenic diet? In what way? Like, keto is not a one-way prescription. It's really different for every person. And we take quite a holistic approach. So we're looking at oxalates and gut health and inflammation and blood pressure. So all these other things impact your outcomes in PKD as well. We've got an amazing team. Really,
Amazing.
like, incredible people. Yeah.
And can they find the link through your website if I put in the link to there?
Yep. So you can go to kidneynutritioninstitute.org. And then when you click on services, you'll see our PKD page, or you can go to the page specifically for the program, which is risepkd.org. And that's just for the program. You can schedule a discovery call and learn more about it, talk with me or Kelly, who's our program coordinator, or you can just go ahead and enroll. So we keep pretty limited slots for each cohort because it's a very high touch point program. But yeah, we'd love to have people come in. We're really, really proud of the work that we do there.
Amazing. All right. Well, I'll make sure I get all those details in below. So anyone with PKD, an amazing opportunity to be part and looked after and walked through a plan that I'm guessing is going to set you up for life to help manage the PKD. So thank you for that. Now, if you want to know more about what we do, make sure you head to www.kidneycoach.com. You'll find us on social media under the same bit. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. That way you'll get notified anytime we put up new content. And I think that's all. Jessianna, thank you again, as always. Good conversation. I think that's an important one. Jessianna will be back to discuss whatever other amazing things she finds as she goes digging into the scientific studies. And we'd like to thank you all. I love that you do that. Thanks for being part of our community, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.